Turning our attention to Southport killer who is set to be sentenced today for murdering 3 young girls in a brutal knife attack that took place last year in UK. The 18-year-old ambushed a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport, stabbing and killing those girls aged between 6 and 9 with a 20-centimeter kitchen knife. As a trial was set to begin in Liverpool on Monday, the teenager pleaded guilty to the murder of the 3 children, attempted murders of 10 others, as well as 2 terror-related charges. He also admitted to producing a biological toxin, possessing materials related to terrorism, and carrying a weapon, including the knife used in the attack. The horrific attack sparked violent protests across the UK, fueled by a fair bit of claims on social media. There was also a crackdown that came in from Starmer's government right after that. So what does this mean for the UK, the divisions that came to the fore after these riots and during those riots? Let's get in Professor Scott Lucas, who's joining us live from Dublin in Ireland, to talk to us about the significance of this trial, this conviction, what it means. Professor Lucas, good to have you on the show. Talk to us about the impact this case has had and will have on the British society.
Well, I think first and foremost, of course, is the impact on those lives that were taken, those 3 young girls who were killed. I think it was 9 girls and staff who were seriously wounded, whose lives will never be the same because this young man, who was 17 at the time, decided he would carry out a mass killing for whatever reason that was there. And certainly, as you have mentioned, he did possess an Al-Qaeda training manual. He did possess materials about how to make ricin, the nerve agent. But what happened, and we need to be very precise about what happened, is that British society was ripped apart, not specifically because of this young man. It was ripped apart because of disinformation, false information, especially from the far right in the UK. And that disinformation fueled riots for almost 2 weeks throughout many British cities by very small groups, but groups that got a lot of headlines by trying to burn migrant centers, etc.
Professor Lucas, this case brought the divisions to fore, didn't it? The underlying issues related to immigrants, the underlying issues within the society about how Europe is now trying to grapple with the problem of illegal immigrants. All that came to fore with this case, didn't it?
It was brought to the fore by disinformation. Before this case, we even had the details. In late July, as the police were investigating the case, the activist, the far-right activist, Tommy Robinson, put out the information that the attacker was an Arab, possibly a Muslim. He put out a false name. That claim spread through social media and was amplified by the leader of Britain's Reform Party to claim that the police were covering up an act of terrorism by an Arab. When the actual information came out that the young man in this case was 17 and is of Rwandan descent, but is a UK citizen, it was too late. Already we were getting the far right that were attacking the migrant centers on the false claim that an immigrant had carried this out. Yes, migration is a serious issue in the UK, and how to deal with migration is an issue that needs to be addressed responsibly. But these far-right riots were not about a responsible response to migration. They were an attempt to rip apart British society further by targeting migrants, thus making the problem worse.
Okay, which brings me to ask you that, do you think this sentencing, how do you think that is going to impact public opinion or shape public opinion going forward on an issue that had a huge impact on British society?
What it should do is to make people think about how, for example, young people could be radicalized, if you want to use that term, in terms of their thoughts, their opinions, and their actions where they will want to take lives. What would be the effect of the media environment? What would be the effect of the cultural environment that would lead to this? But this is an ongoing question. This is a question we should all be concerned about without just simply throwing out the word terrorism. How do you deal with young people and the issues that they have? The problem here is that as I speak to you, the right-wing media and right-wing politicians are not talking about this issue. They are falsely accusing the UK government of a cover-up to protect migrants. In other words, they're going back to the same disinformation last July because they have a political agenda not to address these issues with the concern about young people, about their communities, and about violence, but because they actually want to spread disruption for their own attempts to take political power.
Okay, very quickly, Professor Lucas, then I want to ask you that, what about some of those clampdown measures that were put in place for social media last year by Keir Starmer? Many have said that he's actually imposed very draconian measures on passing social media messages and that. Do you think that will also come to an end?
There was no clampdown on X, which was the major place where these disinformation was being put out by Elon Musk. What happened is there were individual cases where police went to those who put out those messages on the grounds that they could constitute hate crimes, hate speech. They questioned people in those cases, but in almost no case was anyone even in prison for this. So there was not this clampdown on social media that Elon Musk and his ally, the Reform Party's Nigel Farage, allege. You can go to X right now and see these types of messages continuing to spread. So no, I'm afraid this is a diversion. What the Starmer government did, and you can criticize their specific policies.
I'm going to interrupt him right now.
What the Starmer government has done is tried to deal with this case responsibly, both as a legal case and both in terms of trying to prevent this type of rioting that we've seen. They did it at the time. They succeeded in quelling the rioting quite effectively. And what they're trying to do is to avoid further disruption on Britain's streets by actually stating the facts of the case, as they did in Parliament.
I'll have to wrap this up right here, Professor Lucas. Thanks so much for giving that perspective to us on an issue that really did have huge ramifications for the British society.